Los Angeles' City of Angels now on fire.
I'm really kind of shocked at Governor Newsom and Mayor Bass for sitting on their hands and letting these, what they call peaceful protests, turn into a picture of burning vehicles and property destructions.
Not sure what needs to happen for the LA riots to not be considered peaceful protests. So let's focus instead on the Christian attitude and response toward those people who are peacefully protesting in the metropolis, formerly known as the City of Angels. 2 words will guide us through this melees in Los Angeles. Repeat after me. Gur. You're not repeating after me. Gur and Tsar.
Is there a proper blessing for the Tsar?
A blessing for the Tsar, of course. May God bless and keep the Tsar far away from us.
Not that kind of Tsar. A Tsar in the Old Testament was an alien. This was a foreigner who came into the land but didn't assimilate. They weren't breaking the law, but they weren't participating fully in Jewish religion or Jewish life. So they had some rights, but they didn't have full rights of being, say, a Jewish citizen in Israel. A ger is a sojourner. A ger would be an Israelite. I want to be a Jew. I want to be in this nation. The word ger, whenever you see it in the Old Testament, is a sojourner. This was a non-Israelite living within the borders of Israel who integrated fully, religiously, culturally. So think of a ger as a legal, permanent, alien resident, full rights. A tsar could stay, but it was more like having a green card. A ger, sojourner, could participate in festivals. They could get married to a Jewish person, inheritance rights, fully settling into the land, legal protections. Think Rahab, think Ruth. A tsar, which would be an alien, lived among the Israelites, but they didn't have the same standing. In fact, they were even listed in the national census in numbers separately. So I think these 2 words can help us summarize Old Testament laws regarding foreigners. I would put it this way. These are principles, by the way, because remember, we're America, they're Israel. You can't just take this and put it. So we're just gonna state the principles and then try to apply it to our zip code. Here it is. If you assimilated religiously and culturally into Jewish culture in the land of Israel, you can enjoy the rights of citizenship. If you don't fully assimilate, you can stay, maybe not, but you can stay and enjoy some, but not all privileges as long as you don't cause trouble, because that might be the third group of individuals, people who came into the land that not only didn't assimilate, they fought against what was happening in Israel. They were going against the grain. They were lawbreakers. And so these people, it is very clear, did not have to remain in the land. In fact, they'd be removed from the land or worse. Now, having said that, we have to deal with 2 categories of verses when it comes to the subject of immigration, aliens, foreigners, sojourners. The first category, tons of verses that tell the Jewish people to cleanse the land of non-Jewish people. We got to deal with these verses. You see it all over the place. Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Those people, they've got to go, but they need to be understood in light of some verses in Genesis, specifically regarding the Abrahamic covenant, because if we don't do that, you could go to these verses in the Pentateuch and say, everybody's got to go. Nobody gets to come in because we're supposed to have a pure land. It should only be American citizens. We can't do that because these cleansing laws that were given regarding foreigners, they were in light of the Abrahamic covenant. You recall the Abrahamic covenant. It's a 3-fold promise with Abraham. It included a land, some people, and 1 seed. That would be the Messiah. It was to be the land that was to be a light to lighten the Gentiles, a peculiar people out of whom the seed would come. And to have foreigners practicing foreign religions would cause that program to get goofed up. So we read verses like Exodus 23, for my angel will go before you and bring you into the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Canaanites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, and I'll completely destroy them. You shall not worship their gods, note that, nor serve them, nor do according to their deeds, but you shall utterly overthrow them and break their memorial stones to pieces. Now, please note, this was not an ethnic cleansing. This had nothing to do with skin color. Exodus 23 again. I will hand over the inhabitants of the land to you, and you'll drive them out. They shall not live in your land. Otherwise, they will make you sin against me. So this wasn't about skin color. It wasn't about nationality. It was about religion, who you worshiped, and how you behaved. So the Jewish people at that time had every right to drive those folks out of the land. But we also see, once again, Rahab and Ruth, if they assimilate, if they worship Yahweh, they could stay if they assimilated. This is one of the categories that we need to consider and deal with. Otherwise, we're going to probably come up with a rather goofy immigration policy that's not as fully formed as the entire Bible presents. Those are the verses that guide our thinking. Everything we've talked about has been about the intellect, but there's a second category of verses that have to guide our hearts. Exodus 22. You shall not wrong a ger or oppress him. You shall remember you were gers at the land of Egypt. Leviticus 19. When a ger sojourns with you, you shall treat the ger as the native among you, and you shall love him. Leviticus 23:22. When you reap the harvest, you shall leave them for the ger. In other words, you're gonna leave gleanings so that these people who desire to assimilate could eat something. God wants the Jewish people to have a heart for those folks. Why? Because you were once a ger yourself. So treat them in light of the way that you have been treated, even though you were a ger. Now, with all of that, we've got to be careful not to take all of this and create a very particular sort of immigration policy. But we can take the principles, we can glean those, no pun intended, and apply them with a tender heart. So don't panic, my conservative friends. We're going to be as conservative as warranted. But regarding this subject, we shouldn't be like, those disgusting, horrible. Now, if they're criminals and drug dealers, that's a different deal. But a lot of these folks, we don't want to treat them like they're the bottom of our shoe. We're supposed to have a tender heart. So let's see if we can find that tension and balance. We are supposed to be as biblical as we can be and compassionate, but always remember, too, that God is a big fan of nations. He's a big fan of borders. Read Genesis 11. You will see that. So we got this. We got to have some rules here. What are they? That's the intellectual stuff. Is my heart right? So now that hopefully our heads and our hearts are informed, what are we to make of the people who are rioting in the streets of Los Angeles? I think it is safe to say that if you're burning private property and waving the flag of a foreign nation, you're not acting like a ger or even a tsar. Not to mention, you're behaving like a criminal. So Christians, I think, should have no problem with these people being arrested and deported, removed from our country. Simple as that. Now, again, I'm not talking about every single situation. I'm not talking about an entire policy. I'm talking about these people in Los Angeles. Well, while I know the U.S. is in Israel, the principles of the Old Testament applies. Assimilate, obey the laws, starting with immigration laws, and we can let you stay and enjoy all the rights and privileges of being an American, or at least for as long as we still have rights. If you don't obey the laws and you refuse to assimilate, it's clear the government has every right and even duty to say, you gotta go. Kindly remember before you fire away down below. I'm not talking about all immigration, the person you know, the individual who works hard. I'm not talking about any of that now. talking about those people in Los Angeles. As best I can put together Old Testament principles, which is where you're going to find all of the conversations about this subject, which is why it's a good thing we here don't unhitch the Old Testament. I think we can safely say, government, do your job. They aren't GERS and they aren't SARS. Discuss.
Thanks to you, the Fortis Institute launch, massive success, more resources, more people being reached, more trusted voices, and not to be greedy, but we want to reach even more people. We want to keep the momentum going, so we're launching a Truth Unhindered campaign. It's a two-pronged campaign. Number one, we're going to go on an aggressive marketing campaign to identify churches, good, bad, and otherwise, around the globe that need resources, individuals that need Bible studies and biblical resources. And then prong number two, we're going to give it all away. I mean, we already give away a lot of content, but we're going to close the store. All of our resources will now be free. We believe we can reach exponentially more people with great gospel resources, but we need your help. We have a match and give campaign. Every dollar you give, it will be matched. Would you join us for Truth Unhindered? FortisInstitute.org/donate.